Sir, in this project, it's a civil works project using the Remote Subsistence Harbor Act of WRDA of 2007. So we've maintained the draft, and the study has been upon the vessels that use it and the Coast Guard vessels. So the study is looking forward to between 30 and 40 MLLW, mean low water, for the study that we have out there. I understand the 45-foot depth, but that's for another organization if they want to have that capability there for the Arleigh Burke class, I believe is what you're referring to, sir.
And so if I could just press you on that a little bit, what does that answer mean that you just, could you put that into terms that a normal human could understand?
So the community of Nome, sir, and the shipping vessels that are up there, it's the assessment of the vessels that use that facility normally, and that's where we come up with between the 30 and the 40.
Right, but we've got a dynamic situation, don't we? Colonel, you'd agree? The whole point of what we're talking about today is the emerging re-examination of the Arctic, of developing a strategic plan, of keeping up with the great power competition. It's not going to be enough to just service the vessels who are using it now. Isn't that fair to say? I mean, in others, do we have any other deep water ports anywhere nearby?
No, sir, there's port clearance, which
That's
is
it, right?
natural deep water with no facilities.
You're not considering port clearance anymore, are you? Right. So it's the only one we're considering, right, is Nome?
So it's the one that we've, over the last 3 studies, has come to the conclusion that Nome is the best viable port with a benefit-cost ratio that also supports the community, because we're using a civil works authority to do this.
And so if we want to have a port, that's going to be it. And if we want to have a port we can actually use into the future with all the capabilities we want to develop and we're going to spend a lot of taxpayer money on, it's got to be deeper than 22 feet, deeper than 35 feet, doesn't it?
For national defense reasons, sir, I think that you're correct. For 45 feet would be the optimal. But once again, we're doing this under a civil works premise right now, under the authorities the Corps has. So we do a lot of MILCON work. We're just currently not using that for this particular project.
I understand. Thanks. No, I appreciate your point, but I also think you appreciate the larger point, which we're paid to focus on, at least on this side of the dais. Admiral Smith, can you tell me a little bit about what your challenges are in the Arctic, what your infrastructure needs are? Obviously, it's a vast region. The extraordinary work you do in other places simply hasn't been possible in that region. I understand that. Can you put some context around that for us and what we ought to be thinking about, what we ought to expect, what you'd need to really bring it up to the same kind of standards we enjoy in other places?
Yes, sir. Most of our work for hydrographic surveys in the Arctic for shipborne work has been staged out of Dutch Harbor using Nome as a sort of forward operating base when it is accessible to us. And you know, as a result of that and the vast distances that we've talked about earlier, there's a very short operational season available to us for surveying. And so the 2 ships that we have and our contractors have to cram a whole season's worth of activities into that short window. We have, recognizing this challenge, we're looking at ways of hitting that area as hard as we can with as many platforms as we can during that short season. So to that end, we're looking at unmanned systems that are independent with high endurance, ship-based unmanned systems that can sort of be a force multiplier for our existing ships and future ships, and increased use of partnerships and crowdsourcing for the region. All of those together are still not going to be enough because it's such a huge challenge. But we're being very creative with all of the technology and resources available to us.
Admiral, we also heard Admiral Ray talk about how everything's harder in the Arctic. Could you say a word about how you track ice movement, ice flows, oil spills potentially, and the additional challenges you have there?
Yes, sir. Very briefly, you know, the Ice Center is an interagency effort with NOAA and the Navy and the Coast Guard for you know, different parts of the program. There's a lot of satellite observations, aircraft observations, and that tracking has been consistent over time. The oil spill response is particularly tricky because we rely on modeling, which itself is then relying on observations and mapping, which is sparse in the Arctic. So we're investing in science for understanding the behavior of oil in that type of environment, as well as in the modeling necessary to support it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just start out with a little bit of a lighter note. I guess Captain Cook surveyed Alaska